So before we go any further into the build-up for Armageddon, we've got to talk about the backstory of the new Captain America, David Coloulton, because there are parts of his story that have come back around for Will of Doom, Dungeons of Doom, Weapons of Armageddon, and more. So we've got to talk about it, and it's a crazy story. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so to cover David Coloulton's full origin, we've got to go back to the beginning of Chip Zdarsky's 2025 Captain America series, where in the first 5 issues we're given a story called Our Secret Wars, which introduces David Coloulton. And I'll likely break this up into like 3 videos, as opposed to just flying through the whole thing. But aside from the introduction to David Coloulton Captain America that this brings, it also tells a story of Steve Rogers, who's fresh out of the ice and coming back to the modern day. So naturally, this story takes us back to the early 2000s by opening with September 11th, 2001, with David witnessing the September 11th attack firsthand. And in this introduction, we get what is essentially a letter from David, which will make more sense as this continues, with it saying you think you're prepared to see death, but violent death, a man taking a man's life, it's a very different thing. It changes you in ways you know immediately and ways you discover later, in the darkness, when you're as alone as you've ever been. And when death happens on a massive scale, you fight the terrible thought that soon comes. Are we worth saving? And if we are, am I willing to become the thing that I hate to save us? Am I willing to be a killer? And now after this, we hop over to some blonde-haired guy grabbing a bite at a diner who just happens to overhear talks of a shooting and a suspect 1033 subject on the move from a nearby cop's radio. So he goes to check it out, which leads him to 3 other officers, and 2 of them have clearly been shot. When he gets there, he's like, where's the shooter? And one of the officers, she doesn't even look. And she just tells him he took my bike, went down Madison, and said he was heading to the UN building to kill them. So that's where this stranger asks, where is this UN building? So she tells him 1st and 43rd, then she's like, wait, how you don't know where the UN building at? Only for her to then realize this guy is not a police officer, but instead, this dude is Captain America. And at this point in time, it's going to be a shock to a lot of people, with most believing that he was dead and gone since World War II. But when Steve catches up to this guy, he notices right away that this guy's been trained. He knows how to ride and fire. But there's also this question in his mind on whether it's a hired gun, like if he's working for someone. So Steve's kind of got to figure this out as he goes. And now this guy's moving, so to stop him, Steve's got to get above him. So he banks a shot with his shield to knock this dude's bike over. But when he does, he notices this dude's got a bomb strapped to his chest. And as soon as he sees it, he's like, please God, don't let that thing go off. But even with the story giving us an opening like this, which is basically showing us Steve Rogers getting back into the action after all these years, you have people who are in disbelief seeing him, whether it's civilians or any of the other officers. But also when he finally catches up with this guy, there's something about the way he handles the situation. And part of it's just him talking to the dude, because Cap asks if he's military. And the guy tells him, Army, 2nd Lieutenant, 2 tours in the Gulf. And he simply just has a conversation with him. And I mean, part of it still is that Steve Rogers Captain America pull, but he has a conversation with him and he listens. Because this guy's in a place where he just feels like no one else cares, while everyone he knows dies, and the rest of the world just goes on living their lives. But Steve gets through to him, because he talks to the guy with respect, he addresses him as Lieutenant, and I mean, the captain does pull rank shortly after, but he gets through to him, and he gets him to drop the detonator. But when Cap asks this guy to shut down a bomb, he's basically like, well, I didn't think about that part. You know, that wasn't exactly the plan. But fortunately, Tony shows up and he disables it over wireless. And again, with this being a new world that Cap's being brought back to, where he's only been back for 1 week after being discovered by the Avengers and thawed out. But over time, we'll see Steve discover how much the lines have blurred since he's been gone. Because even now when he's like, it's amazing, the idea of a United Nations. Like, this wasn't here when he went into ice. It started right after. So he asked Iron Man, and you say it's designed to stop future world wars, and Iron Man's like, that's a big part of why it was founded, though there's always a debate about its efficacy. And Steve's just like, nothing is ever straightforward, is it? But it's nice to see that the world has at least tried. So Iron Man asks Cap if he'll join the Avengers, because they even have a benefactor by the name of Tony Stark who has government connections. Because in the here and now, it's not really known that Tony Stark is Iron Man. But Steve turns this down and he tells him that he already belongs to an organization, that's the US Army, and it's time he returned to base. And when we go to another flashback for David Coloulton, after what happened at 9/11, he wants to serve. But when he went to enlist, he was rejected by the US Armed Forces. And even with them telling him no, he's still not leaving. And one of these guys even tell him, like, look, you have severe persistent asthma. Your vision is 20/60. And frankly, you look like a strong wind to snap you in two. But this tenacious approach from Coloulton, it gets the attention of one of the nearby sergeants. So he ends up getting in. However, his mom isn't too crazy about the idea, because for one thing, she thinks this is all about revenge, and the other, which ends up pushing David and his mother apart, is the fact that they've already lost his older brother Brian in Kuwait. And with David being smaller in stature, she thinks he's just getting ready to get himself killed. And she even tells him at one point, you need therapy, not a gun, not some racist war. And she even tells him, my heart breaks for everyone who died, but it's also breaking for everyone about to die. And you can just see how difficult it is for the both of them, not only with just talking about his brother Brian, but also with the tug of war between what she wants David to do and what David wants to do. And this continues in his letter with him saying, I never faulted those who stayed at home. I look at the men in the trenches and can see those who should have stayed behind, a fear that runs through them so deep. To face the horrors of war, my eye trains on them in battle, distracted by what they'll do. I couldn't stay behind, not while they were out there. Which goes back to why he wants to get out there and fight. It's not just about him. But nonetheless, some of the other fellas, they catch David crying on the phone. So they basically tell him, we're gonna whoop your head when we get outside, boy. And that is exactly what happens. And really, these other guys, they think because David is smaller and not as strong, that he's gonna be a liability in the field. So they're extra hard on him. And he continues saying, my life has been a succession of bullies. They seek out the weak, and I just radiated weakness. But I fought back. I always fought back. It didn't matter that I rarely won. And when the world turned dark and the bullies gathered, I did what I've always done. I lifted my fists and prepared for the pain. Which from here, this leads to a moment that changes everything. Because later, when the sergeant finds David with his flashlight on after lights out, he snatches him up and drags him outside. And even now we see David reading this book called American Letters, Captain America Notes from the Front Lines. Which goes to show that he was clearly inspired by Captain America, with Steve Rogers being the kid from Brooklyn that was bullied, who was also determined to serve. But when the sergeant catches David with his light on, after lights out, he ends up getting dragged out. And the sergeant's telling David all kind of things like how he's a mistake and how he's an embarrassment and how the other recruits were right when they said David's gonna get them killed. And now when this happened, there's a couple things that I'm thinking. And to be clear, I have no military background. So you guys who know, you can fire off in the comments. But I imagine if you have lights on during lights out, I imagine it's more about discipline than anything else, because if you can't exercise discipline in training, let alone in the field, then you're gonna get yourself and a lot of other people killed. But the other thing I'm thinking while the sergeant's just beating the mess out of David is that this is a test. And of course the other recruits are like, okay, what's going on? And some are happy to see it. But for the sergeant, I imagine he's really trying to push David to see if he'll give up, which he does not. When the sergeant calls him a crybaby like the other recruits did, David's like, I'm not crying. He puts his hands up, he takes the beating, and he's like, I'm not leaving. I'll never leave. Which eventually leads to lights out for David. But when he wakes up and he's struggling to reach his inhaler, the sergeant is right there. And he tells David it must be tiring, being so damn feeble, your soul, your spirit wanting more, and your body saying no. But you didn't stay down. It's not in you, is it? So what if I told you, Mr. David Coloulton, the weakest damn recruit I've ever witnessed, that I could cure that asthma? Which again goes back to why I believe the sergeant was testing David, because now he knows David really has heart, and he's not the type to stay down. And then back over with Steve Rogers, who's doing all sorts of training exercises after returning to the US Army, which he did by just marching right into the Pentagon. And initially there was doubt about him actually being Steve Rogers, but after he flew through all these different obstacles with flying colors, proving to be, quote, the perfect specimen, eventually these scientists were like, yeah, no doubt about it, he's him. And it comes to a point where this is eventually stopped by General Thaddeus Ross, because he's seen everything he needs to see, he's read Steve's debrief, and now he's got some questions. So he starts out by asking Steve, why are you here, soldier? Why walk into the Pentagon, a place that didn't even exist when you were last roaming this planet? From what we can tell, that maladjusted crew funded by Tony Stark seems only too eager to have you. It's a new world, the war is long over, and you can go anywhere you wished. So again, why here? And that's where Steve pauses for a moment as he thinks back to the last moment where he saw Bucky, which is where he believed Bucky died. And he tells the general this past week that he's been back, he's seen some amazing things, but everyone he cared about in the world he knew before, they're all gone. Bucky's dead, his parents died before he enlisted, everyone's gone. So he tells the general, the only thing that mattered to me, that still exists, still does what I needed to, that can make sense of this world, is here, with the men and women who serve. And you already know, for General Ross, that's like music to his ears. So he starts early by getting Steve on his first mission. And we start to see this unfold when we head over to the Fantastic Four, who are currently fighting Giganto. And they were struggling until Steve showed up, holding Mole Man saying, I believe this gentleman is the source of your problems. But the reason why Steve's here is because he needs to speak to Mr. Fantastic. And the reason why he needs to talk to Reed is because Steve needs to learn about Dr. Doom. So Reed gives Steve the rundown, and he tells him how they were in college together and how Victor's brilliant and volatile. And Reed tells him how there was an accident, his face was scarred, and he dropped out. And a few years later, he resurfaced, back in his home country. And right there, he's like, well, I'm sure you got the rest in his file. And this is where we find out Steve's first mission, now that he's back. It's about going after Doom following his recent takeover. Because as part of Doom taking power, he destroyed the US Embassy in Latveria and held the American diplomats as his prisoners. So Steve's being sent over there with a special team to bring them back. And when he tells this to Reed, Reed offers the help of the Fantastic Four to go with them, only for Steve to tell him that's a no-can-do. Because in this new world that's still new to Steve, America now has the atomic bomb, it has superheroes, and that has the world watching and scared. So to have superpowered beings going to other countries carrying out military operations, that's just asking for a next level world war. But at the same time, Steve's able to be an exception because of his background, so he's considered quote-unquote enhanced military because no other country is willing to stop their super soldier programs. And after this, Steve gets called in by General Ross after the last spy went dark. So now they gotta move in quick to Doomstat with hopes that their last spy's information is still good. So Ross tells him that there are 3 points in the city that they've ID'd as possibilities for where the hostages might be held. And he tells him the only man who says he knows the location for sure is Marius Wolf, head of Latvian resistance. He's located in the Northeast District in a safe house and is willing to help. And when Steve hears this, he's basically like, okay, yeah, it sounds great if this guy's still alive, because as it stands, things aren't looking good. Because this isn't like a hostage situation where Doom's making demands, because there's been no communication with Doom since the embassy attack. And so to move forward, Steve asks the general, how small is their entry team? Which from here leads to Steve meeting the crew. And among them, you have people like Terry Mendoza, who just goes by Chill. And right away, dude's like, are you really him? About to shake Steve's hand off. And Steve's just like, I am. And the next person we meet, Julie Slate, who's over here looking at Chill like, bro, why you glazing so hard? But in her case, she's introduced as marksman for SEAL Team X, the Howling Commandos. So right away, Steve's over here looking like, man, they just gonna take the name of my infantry and slap it on anything, huh? So he tells Slate, like, Howling Commandos, big name to live up to, soldier. And that's where she's like, we're Marines, soldier. So he lets her know that he means no offense, just getting the lay of the land. But from here, he's like, is that it? We a 3-person team? And that's when another person steps in, telling Steve, no, sir, we're not. As David Coloulton, who's much taller than he was before, enters the room. As his letter continues saying, so I went out into the world to answer the question, can I stop the bullies? Can Captain America make the world a better place? As we go on to see David Coloulton present at the toppling of Saddam's statue in 2003. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.